On a frigid winter night in Montana, a dark operation unfolds far from the watchful eyes of the law. An illegal dog breeding facility operates in secrecy, where profit is prized over welfare. Here, German Shepherd puppies are bred under harsh conditions, destined for sale with little regard for their health or happiness. But as law enforcement closes in, the operators make a desperate escape, leaving behind the innocent puppies to fend for themselves in the freezing wilderness. What happens next is not just a fight for survival, but a stark look into the heart of human cruelty and the chance for redemption. As the winter sun dipped below the horizon, its last light fading fast, the vast Montana plains were quickly enveloped in the bitter cold of a relentless snowstorm. This was the kind of cold that seeped into your bones, the kind that whispered of long nights and the desolation of the northern wilderness. Amidst this icy solitude, a clandestine drama unfolded far from the watchful eyes of the law. Deep in the forest near the small town of Evergreen, the snow blanketed the ground, covering the traces of human trespass. Here, an illegal dog breeding operation had been hastily abandoned. The operators, a group of men hardened by greed and the brisk trade of animal misery, had fled into the dark, leaving behind their latest litter of German Shepherd puppies. These innocent creatures, barely a few weeks old, were left huddled together in a makeshift shelter made of old wood and torn fabric, their whimpers lost in the howling wind. The snowstorm intensified, the wind sculpting the snow into deep drifts around the trees. The puppies, with their thin coats and unsteady limbs, were ill-equipped for the merciless cold that threatened to claim them. Their small bodies trembled uncontrollably, their cries growing weaker as the temperature plummeted. However, not all hearts in the vicinity were frozen by the cold or hardened by cruelty. A shadowy figure, cloaked in a thick, hooded parka, moved through the woods with a purpose. This was no breeder nor law enforcer. This was someone whose conscience had compelled them to act upon hearing of the abandoned pups. Known only to a few as a local recluse with a past shrouded in mystery, this individual had lived among the trees for years, a silent guardian to the voiceless. With careful steps, the figure approached the place where the puppies had been left to fate. The wind howled, masking the sound of approaching footsteps. The puppies, sensing a presence, tried to muster the strength to bark, but only soft whines filled the air. The figure paused, their breath visible in the frigid air, and looked down at the helpless animals. Seeing their pitiful state, the mysterious rescuer knew there was no time to waste. One by one, they gently picked up the puppies, wrapping them in the spare fabric of their large coat to shield them from the biting cold. With each puppy secured against their warm body, the figure turned towards the town, their boots crunching softly in the fresh snow. The journey through the storm was treacherous. The wind bit at any exposed skin, and the snow obscured vision, making each step a gamble. But the figure pressed on, driven by a determination that the pups would not be left to die in the cold. They knew of one place, one person in Evergreen who could help these innocent souls. Helen Peterson. Helen, a widow known throughout the town for her kindness and love for animals, lived alone in a quaint log cabin on the outskirts of Evergreen. Her home was a warm beacon set against the backdrop of relentless winter. It was to this haven that the rescuer headed, their burden growing heavier with each step, not just from the weight of the puppies, but from the gravity of the responsibility they had undertaken. As they neared Helen's home, the lights inside cast a warm glow through the windows, the promise of a hearth and hope. Reaching the edge of the clearing around her home, the figure set down their precious cargo just outside the reach of the light spilling from the house. They arranged the puppies so they were sheltered from the wind by the porch and placed a note they had prepared, a simple message scrawled in haste. Please help them. With one last look at the pups, ensuring they were as comfortable as could be under the circumstances, The mysterious figure retreated back into the shadows of the forest, disappearing as silently as they had arrived. Their part in this tale was done. The next chapter of the puppies' lives would be for Helen to write. Inside her cabin, Helen remained unaware of the drama unfolding just yards from her door. The storm outside seemed to isolate her further from the world, wrapping her home in a blanket of white that muffled sound and distorted time. Yet fate had a way of knocking on the most secluded doors, and soon Helen would find her quiet night interrupted by a new heartbeat at her doorstep, a heartbeat in the form of 6 shivering puppies whose lives hung in the balance, waiting for her to step into their story. Helen Peterson's nights were often long and laden with the echoes of a life once filled with laughter and companionship. Her husband, George, had been her rock, her confidant, and partner in every sense of the word. His sudden passing 5 years earlier had left a void in Helen's life that seemed impossible to fill. Not long after, she faced another heartbreaking loss. Her loyal Labrador, Luke, who had been by her side for nearly a decade, also passed away. The silence of her home in the ensuing months was palpable, a stark reminder of her solitude. Yet Helen was not one to dwell in her sorrows. She found solace in her faith and the routine of daily walks through the woods surrounding her home, a ritual that kept her connected to the memories of her loved ones. Her walks were a time for reflection and communion with the nature around her, offering moments of peace in the solitude of the Montana wilderness. On this particular frigid evening, as Helen wrapped herself in a thick scarf and stepped out for her walk, the wind seemed to carry a different tune. Instead of the usual rustling leaves and the distant howl of the wind, there was something else, a faint whimpering that stirred the stillness of the night. Intrigued and concerned, Helen followed the sounds, her footsteps cautious in the thick snow. As she approached the edge of her property, the whimpering grew louder and more desperate. It didn't take long for her to discover its source. Tucked away in a small nook under her porch, shivering and huddled together for warmth, were 6 German Shepherd puppies. Their tiny bodies were barely visible under the thin layer of snow that had begun to settle on them. Helen's heart sank at the sight. The puppies were in dire need of warmth and care. Without a moment's hesitation, Helen scooped the puppies into her arms and rushed them inside. She laid them gently by the fireplace, where a fire roared warmly, casting a soothing glow over the room. As the puppies began to thaw out, Helen fetched some old towels to dry them off and made a soft bed from an old blanket. She watched over them, her eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. It was clear to her that these puppies had been abandoned, left to fend for themselves in the harsh winter conditions. Knowing they needed sustenance, Helen prepared a warm mixture of milk and a little bit of puppy food she had kept in the pantry, a reminder of her days with Luke. The puppies, rejuvenated by the warmth, began to feed eagerly. As they ate, Helen's mind raced with questions about who could have left these helpless creatures in such a state. But more pressing was the realization that these puppies, like her, were in need of companionship and care. As the night deepened and the puppies settled into a contented sleep, Helen felt a renewed sense of purpose. The house, so long quiet and somber, now echoed with the soft sounds of the puppies' breathing. It was as if life had been breathed back into its walls. In rescuing these puppies, Helen had also, in a way, rescued herself from the clutches of her loneliness. The pain of her past losses would never fully dissipate, but in caring for these new lives, she found a connection to the love she had once shared with George and Luke. It was a poignant reminder that even in the depths of winter, warmth and hope could find a way to flourish. Helen knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but as she watched the puppies sleep peacefully by the fire, she felt equipped to face whatever came her way. With faith as her guide and love as her motivation, she was ready to embark on this unexpected journey of healing and care for herself and for the 6 little lives that had stumbled into her world. As the days passed, Helen's bond with the 6 German Shepherd puppies grew stronger. They had become a constant source of joy and affection in her once quiet home. Amidst the feeding schedules and playful chaos, Helen took it upon herself to ensure that each puppy was not only healthy but also happy. Her experience with dogs gave her a keen eye for details others might miss, and it was during one of her meticulous checkups that she noticed something unusual. One of the puppies, which she had affectionately named Shadow due to his darker fur and mysterious demeanor, had a distinct marking under his fur. As she groomed him one morning, Helen discovered a series of numbers and letters tattooed faintly on his inner thigh. It was not a common practice for local pet owners to mark their pets in such a manner, and this piqued Helen's curiosity. The marking looked professional, the kind that could be linked to specific breeding registries or exclusive breeding clubs. Puzzled by this discovery, Helen decided to seek advice. She called Jacob, the local veterinarian who had helped her on numerous occasions with her previous pets. Jacob was intrigued by her description and suggested that this could be a sign of the puppy's lineage from a high-profile breeding line, possibly even internationally recognized. With this new information, Helen felt a surge of responsibility. She knew that such markings might indicate that the puppies were part of an illegal breeding operation, possibly linked to the abandonment. Concerned about the implications, she decided to contact the local authorities. She reported her find, providing them with the markings and explaining how she had come to discover the puppies. The police were immediately interested. The information Helen provided could be the key to uncovering more about the illegal operation they had been trying to shut down. They had suspected that a high-profile illegal breeding ring was operating in the area, and Helen's discovery added a crucial piece to the puzzle. Later that week, officers arrived at Helen's home to take a closer look at the marking. They confirmed that the tattoo was indeed a breeder's mark, used typically for tracking breeding and ownership history in professional circles. This evidence supported the notion that the puppies were part of a larger, more sinister operation. Helen watched as the officers documented everything, her heart heavy with the thought that such cruelty was so close to home. The officers thanked Helen for her vigilance and assured her that she had done the right thing by calling them. They informed her that her cooperation could lead to significant breakthroughs in their ongoing investigation into animal trafficking and illegal breeding in Montana. As the police left, Helen returned to her living room, where the puppies played, unaware of the role they had just played in uncovering a criminal operation. Watching them, Helen felt a mix of emotions. She was relieved that the puppies were safe with her, but the reality of the situation weighed heavily on her. She knew that the road ahead might bring challenges, but she was prepared to face them. Her faith and the unexpected role she had found herself in as protector of these animals gave her strength. That evening, as Helen settled down beside the crackling fire with the puppies sleeping soundly around her, she reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. Once isolated in her grief, she now found herself at the center of an important fight against cruelty. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and a determination to ensure that the warmth of her home countered the coldness of the world outside. With each puppy's breath, a whisper of hope lingered in the air, reinforcing Helen's resolve to stand as a guardian for those who could not speak for themselves. The investigation into the illegal dog breeding ring intensified following Helen's discovery of the identifying mark on one of the rescued puppies. The local police department, in collaboration with animal welfare organizations and regional law enforcement, launched a comprehensive inquiry into the operation that seemed to span several counties across Montana. As the winter snow began to thaw, revealing the hidden secrets of the cold earth, Helen found herself deeply involved in the investigation. Her home became a focal point for meetings with detectives and representatives from animal protection agencies. Her initial report had sparked a significant interest, leading to broader implications for the fight against animal cruelty in the region. The authorities were particularly interested in Helen's detailed observations of the puppies' behaviors and health conditions, which provided them with insights into the conditions they might have endured before being abandoned. Helen, with her years of experience in caring for animals, provided detailed accounts that helped the police piece together the operational methods of the breeders. One sunny morning, as Helen prepared her home for another visit from the investigators, she laid out all the documentation she had compiled, veterinary records, her notes on the puppies' recovery, and photos documenting their progress. Each piece of evidence was a testament to her dedication to the well-being of the animals she had unexpectedly come to protect. The lead investigator, Detective Martinez, arrived with a team, including a veterinary forensic expert. They examined the puppies once more, particularly the markings that had initially caught Helen's attention. With each examination, the team gathered more evidence, building a case that they hoped would lead to significant legal actions against the perpetrators. During these sessions, Helen learned about the dark underbelly of illegal animal trade, a lucrative and cruel business that exploited defenseless creatures for profit. She listened, her heart heavy, to stories of raids and rescues and of the long, often heart-wrenching road to rehabilitation that awaited many of these animals. The knowledge deepened her resolve to provide the best care possible for her 6 wards and any others that might still be out there, waiting for rescue. The investigation also brought to light the network of informants and tip-offs that often led to breakthroughs in such cases. Detective Martinez explained how every piece of information, no matter how small, could be crucial. Helen's sharp observation had been one such piece, a key that unlocked new paths in their pursuit of justice. As weeks turned into months, the puppies grew stronger and more playful, their coats glossy and their eyes bright with vitality. They had become beloved members of the community, with people often stopping by Helen's house to check on their progress and to offer donations for their care. Through it all, Helen remained a steadfast participant in the investigation. She attended meetings, provided statements, and even participated in community outreach programs to educate the public about animal welfare and the horrors of illegal breeding. The chapter of Helen's involvement in the investigation concluded with a community gathering organized by the police, where she was recognized for her crucial role in the ongoing efforts to dismantle the illegal breeding network. Standing before her friends and neighbors, Helen felt a mix of pride and sorrow. She had never sought recognition. Her actions were driven purely by her love for animals and her belief in justice. As the applause rang out in the town hall, Helen felt a sense of closure for this phase of her journey. Yet, she knew the fight was far from over. With each puppy looking up at her with trust and affection, she was reminded of the responsibility she had taken on. Helen was ready to continue her advocacy, no matter what challenges lay ahead, fortified by the community's support and her unwavering faith. The investigation would continue to unfold, but Helen's part in it had already left an indelible mark, not only on the case, but also on her life. She had transformed her grief into action, her home into a haven, and her days into missions of mercy, redefining her purpose in the twilight years of her life. The investigation eventually wound down as the authorities made significant arrests and dismantled part of the illegal breeding network. The closure of the case brought relief to the community and to Helen, who had been at the epicenter of the tumult since discovering the puppies. With the breeders facing justice, attention turned to the future of the 6 German Shepherd puppies that had started it all. As spring unfurled its leaves and flowers, it brought with it a sense of renewal and hope. The puppies, now vibrant and healthy under Helen's devoted care, were ready for the next chapter in their lives, finding forever homes. While the thought of parting with them tugged at Helen's heart, she knew this was the moment she had been preparing them for. The local animal shelter, along with several animal welfare organizations that had been involved in the investigation, collaborated to organize an adoption event. The event was to be held in the town park, a day of celebration and community spirit, symbolizing the triumph over adversity for these puppies. Helen spent the weeks leading up to the event preparing the puppies for adoption. She taught them basic commands, ensured they were socialized and accustomed to different people and situations, and most importantly, gave them all the love she could muster. As the day approached, posters featuring the playful faces of the puppies were displayed around town, and excitement in the community grew. On the morning of the adoption event, Helen woke early. She bathed each puppy, brushed their thick coats until they shone, and adorned them with new collars and bright, cheerful bandanas. Driving to the park, the puppies yipped and played in the back of her van, oblivious to the significant change coming their way. The park was buzzing with families, animal lovers, and reporters covering the happy outcome of a story that had captured the heart of the community. Each puppy had a small pen adorned with decorations and toys, and their profiles were displayed, telling their stories and showcasing their playful personalities. As families began to arrive, Helen felt a complex mix of emotions. With each puppy that wagged its tail and licked the hands of potential new owners, Helen felt a pang of loss, but also immense joy. One by one, the puppies met with families that seemed to fall in love with them at first sight. Helen watched as the puppies she had nursed back to health, taught and loved, found new homes with people who promised to cherish and care for them. The hardest goodbye was with Shadow, the first puppy she had found, and the one with the mysterious markings that had led to the unraveling of the breeding ring. A young couple, who had followed the puppy's story from the beginning, adopted Shadow. They assured Helen that she could visit any time, a comfort that eased her sorrow. By the end of the day, all the puppies had found new homes. The park slowly emptied, leaving Helen sitting on a bench, watching the sun set. She felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment and relief, but the quiet around her was a stark reminder of the emptiness she would return to at home. Yet, as she drove back to her now quieter house, Helen realized that this was not an end, but a beginning. The experience had rekindled a passion within her for animal welfare, and she felt a renewed purpose. She decided then to continue working with local shelters and to advocate for animal rights, ensuring that her journey with the puppies was just the start of a new chapter in her life of service and compassion. The quiet in Helen Peterson's home was profound. After the last of the puppies had been adopted and the cheerful noises of their playful antics had faded away, Helen felt the weight of the silence settle around her. It was a stark reminder of the solitude that had once defined her daily existence. Yet, this silence now carried a different meaning. It was filled with echoes of success and a deep sense of fulfillment from having saved those innocent lives and nurtured them back to health. However, Helen realized that the void left by the puppy's departure could not be filled by sitting idly. The experience had reawakened a part of her that she thought had been lost with the passing of her husband George and her beloved Labrador Luke. It reignited her sense of purpose and showed her the impact one individual could have in the broader community. Inspired to maintain this newfound vibrancy in her life, Helen decided to take a proactive step towards engaging more deeply with her community. She began by reaching out to the local animal rescue center, where she offered her services as a volunteer. The center welcomed her with open arms, appreciative of her recent role in rescuing and caring for the puppies. At the center, Helen found a new family of sorts, other volunteers who shared her passion for animals and staff who worked tirelessly to protect and care for the city's vulnerable animal population. Helen's days soon filled with activities that brought new rhythms to her life. She helped with the daily operations of the shelter, from feeding the animals and cleaning their spaces to assisting with administrative tasks. Her nurturing touch was a boon for many of the animals, and her presence became a fixture at the center. Moreover, Helen began participating in community outreach programs organized by the shelter. These programs aimed to educate the public about animal welfare, responsible pet ownership, and the cruel realities of illegal breeding operations. Helen shared her personal experiences, speaking at schools and community centers, turning her past ordeal into powerful lessons and advocacy messages. As months passed, Helen's involvement with the rescue center deepened. She took part in fundraising events and helped to spearhead several initiatives that improved the lives of rescued animals across the community. Her home, once a quiet place filled with memories and solitude, became a hub of planning and creativity, often hosting meetings and small gatherings for the shelter staff and volunteers. One evening, as Helen sat in her living room surrounded by new friends from the shelter, planning an upcoming adoption drive, she reflected on how much her life had changed since the puppies had entered her life. She felt a profound gratitude for the series of events that had led her here, a place of involvement, community, and hope. The chapter of Helen's life that had started with a lonely walk in the woods had evolved into one where she was a valued member of a community, a defender of the voiceless, and a beacon of hope for animals in need. Her journey illustrated that new beginnings could be born from the most unexpected events, and that even in the winter of one's life, the spring of new purpose could bloom abundantly. As she looked around at the eager faces of her colleagues planning their next big project, Helen felt a surge of energy. With each plan made and each animal helped, she was building a legacy of compassion and resilience. Helen knew that while the quiet moments of reflection would always be a part of her, the joy of active engagement in a cause she loved was a powerful testament to the enduring capacity for renewal at any stage of life. As we close this chapter of Helen Peterson's remarkable journey with the 6 German Shepherd puppies, it's clear that her story is more than just a tale of rescue and rehabilitation. It's a profound testament to the power of faith, the strength of the human spirit, and the deep bonds that can form between humans and animals. Helen's unwavering commitment to these animals not only transformed their lives, but also rekindled her own sense of purpose and connection to the community. Her story reminds us that no act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Through her faith in God and her actions, Helen has shown that it's possible to overcome grief and loneliness and find fulfillment in serving others. As we reflect on Helen's story, let us remember that each of us has the power to make a difference. Like Helen, you can be a beacon of hope and a force for good in your community. Whether it's volunteering at a local shelter, adopting a pet in need, or simply spreading the word about the importance of animal welfare, every action counts. We invite you to share this story of hope and transformation. Comment below with your thoughts or share your own stories of how faith, hope, and compassion have played a role in your life. Let's spread the message that with a little faith and a lot of heart, we can all be part of creating a better world for animals and people alike. May God bless you as you step out in faith to help others. Remember, your actions can inspire others to join in this cause, creating a ripple effect of kindness and compassion that reaches far beyond what we can see. Don't forget to share this story with friends and family. Let's continue to support those who devote their lives to caring for the least among us. Together, with faith and action, we can achieve incredible things. Share the love, spread the hope, and let your faith be the light that guides you in all your endeavors.